Hey, welcome to Now You Know, and today I want to talk about everybody's favorite topic, hiring. There are some key elements or foundations that government has that I think are broken and are really holding government back. Procurement's one. I'll talk a ton about procurement. I'm actually doing a mini series with a bunch of friends exploring how government procurement is being innovated and experimented with all around the world. So it's something I really care about. But another one is HR, and a key aspect of HR is hiring. And there's a real problem here. Now, I know that this is not universal in terms of where you are right now. So, for example, many governments are cutting a ton, and it's not even equal across government departments and sections. But many governments are having a real hiring problem. There's a gap between the skills and the people they need and who they're able to hire. And this is causing government to having vacancies in key roles and having to find alternatives to that. And this is a huge deal because we're expecting government to deal with some really heavy, meaty challenges. And it needs to have the people with the skill sets to do that well. Otherwise, it's not going to be able to do it, and we all suffer. So I was quite excited to see that Robert Gordon from the Recoding America Fund released an article or a chapter of a book looking at hiring. And so I want to dig into some of the stuff that he talked about there as solutions to some of the hiring challenges we had. So first off, he looks at New York City. And the issue that they had in New York City was that they have entrance exam. So if you're applying for a job in New York City, you have to do this exam. And if you pass this exam and get a certain score, then that goes towards your application. The problem was that this was just taking too much time. By the time you did the exam and then you did the application process and eventually got to a place where you're ready to hire someone, that person had already taken a job somewhere else because that job just happened more quickly. And one of the issues with government hiring is it just takes too long. So what New York City did is they removed the need for people to take the exam. And the big concern was, oh no, you take away the exam, how are we going to ensure we get the quality of people with it that we need? Well, it turns out the rest of the hiring process took care of that. The exam, you didn't need it. And so what they found was they were able to significantly cut down time, and that allowed them to fill a lot of vacancies that they had, which then built up their capacity, which is amazing. And the government of Tennessee did something very similar and had similar results. Again, cut the exam requirement, shorten the hiring process, and you are able to hire more people, and the quality was still there. In the case of North Carolina, they had a different problem. It wasn't the exam, it was pay rigidity and job classification. So the pay rigidity, really most basic way of saying it is they just were not able to put forward competitive salaries with what the person could get in the private sector. And so the person's like, well, why would I take a pay cut for this job, even though I want to work? Like, a lot of people prefer to work in government because they're able to work on problems they care about. But at what cost? And if the gap is too great between what the private sector gives you and what the public sector gives you, people are going to choose the private sector. It's a completely rational decision. So the first issue was pay rigidity, not able to compete with private sector salaries. The second issue was just a real rigidity around job classification. So the jobs that were being advertised didn't resonate with what people were looking for because the job classification hadn't kept up with how the industry and how the sector was changing in terms of the type of jobs that people were looking for. And so as a result, people didn't think when they saw the job posting, they didn't see themselves in that job because the classifications that were being talked about didn't resonate with them. And so what North Carolina did is they did two things. One is they got rid of the outdated job classifications and allowed for it to be much simpler and much more flexible. And also the job application itself became something that people could more understand what the job was actually about. And the second thing they did is they allowed for certain specialized jobs to have much more flexibility around pay. That way teams could put forward a much more competitive job and thus bring in the top talent they needed with that specialized skill. Again, two very simple things: pay more flexible, simplified job classifications, and made a big difference in North Carolina and in their ability to fill these gaps. Beyond that, Gordon talks about a couple key things. Beyond the removal of the civil service exam, and moving to more of a replacing it with a more skill-based assessment, modernizing and simplifying job classifications so they're not, from the 90s. Two others I thought were quite interesting. One is allowing people to apply for multiple jobs through a single posting. Governments are huge and oftentimes have many jobs that are open at any one point, and it is a huge pain in the ass and a huge time sink to have to apply for each one individually. Give people, and oftentimes the applications are fairly similar, so you're just repeating things over and over again. So simplify it down so a person can apply for multiple jobs through the same application process. And you're going to get more people applying for more jobs, which then gives you more options, which is great. The flip side is allowing multiple agencies to pull from a common pool. So in government, we create pools all the time where we know we're going to need to hire a bunch of policy people. So we create a competition we create a pool. We're able to bring a bunch of people through the process and have a bunch of people who are pre-vetted to be picked up for policy. The interesting thing is it's oftentimes department by department or even team by team. So that means that even though different departments are both looking for policy people, they're creating their own pools, which is silly. Create a common pool because most departments have similar needs, and you can work out the differences later in the hiring process. So create a common pool makes it easier for multiple agencies. Also, the hiring process itself is cumbersome and takes time. And if you are a small team, you do not have the capacity to go through the hiring process. So if we can pool resources, create common pools that people can pull from, it's going to make it a lot easier for agencies to find people they need quickly with limited amount of resources they have for hiring. I know that's one of the things I noticed when I worked in government a bunch as well, is that I didn't have capacity to hire the people I needed. I just simply did not have the capacity to do it. And so you try to find solutions. And I mean, one of the easiest solutions is you just go to consultants and bring them in because it's a much more streamlined process. But that wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to bring in people to be in the team itself. So things like this will make a big difference. And like I said, I think hiring is one of the things that we're not talking enough right now about fixing. When we talk about fixing government, hiring is a key part of that process. So really excited that Gordon put this chapter together. Give it a read. Let me know your thoughts. What are some things that you've seen work well on hiring, or not well? What are some horror stories you've had about hiring? What are the problems you see? Let's have a conversation about how we can really improve government hiring. And I'll catch you next time on Now You Know.